Hello, my name is Simon and welcome to another video tutorial on React. Today we'll be looking at how to manage state in React using rxjs. So you can see I have created a React app and I haven't done anything on it. You can see I just run npm start and the app is up and running. So the first thing we want to look at is package.js. You can see this is the current dependency we have. We don't have rxjx, and we also need one more package, which is the router, React router DOM. So all right, let us get that installed quickly. So I'm going to do npm install react-router DOM and rxjx. So while that is going on, I want to remove everything I have in the app. So I'm going to remove this. Then I want to add Bootstrap. So for that, I have copied a link, a CDN link to Bootstrap. So I'm going to paste it here. All right. So our installation is complete, and if you look at our package.json, we can see we now have rxjs installed version 7.8.0, and we have React Router DOM version 6.7.0. So our app is still up and running. Okay, probably it should be blank by now. Good. So we're on the right path. All right. So the first thing I want to do is to include my app in to include the React router in their index. I want to wrap this with the browser router from React router DOM. So it has been imported. You can see here, import browser router from React router DOM, and I'm going to wrap the app here. You can see this is it. It has been wrapped. Let me zoom in a little. It has been wrapped. Okay. So I'm going to save and everything should look good. Okay, so another thing I want to do here is to set up the RSGX. So for that, I'm going to click on the source and create a folder. I'm going to call this store, and in the store, I want to create a file called rsgs store.js. All right. So in this rsgs store file, I want to import just one file, which is the behavior subject. So I'm going to import the behavior subject from rsgx. So the next thing for me to do is to declare my store. So I'm going to declare my store. I'm going to call this counter store, or let me just counter global store, because this is global store, and this is going to be a new instance of the behavior subject. So this needs a default value, and for the default value, I'm going to put 0. The next thing I want to do is to create setter and getter. So I'm going to create a set counter function. Set counter. No, let me use set store counter. Okay. So what this does is it takes in a new value and it sends the new value to every subscribers. So this is the counter global dot next. Dot next send the current value to every subscribers. So I'm going to put in the new value here. Okay. So I'm going to define another function, which is the getters. So what this does is to get the current global store. So let me just change this to G, which is get store counter, and semicolon. So the only thing we need to do is to return this behavior subject, right? So with these few lines of code, we are done setting up the state management for RSGX. The next thing we want to do is Sorry about that. Next thing we want to do is to consume this global store here. All right, so I'm going to save this file, and in my source folder, I'm going to create another folder called pages. So in this folder called pages, I want to create a file. I'm going to create a file called page one dot um dot gxx. Okay, so this is going to be a functional component sfc. I'm going to give it page one. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so in our page one, I will need some little design, but let me define, since I added bootstrap, let me just add some classes here. So this is going to be container and some margin top of 3. Okay, so I'm going to go to bootstrap page. I want to copy the jumbotron. So here is the bootstrap. Here's the bootstrap jumbotron. I want to use this for my page. So I'm going to copy this and paste it in my container. So we need to format this. Just format this quickly. Then this need the ending tag, and we need to replace every class with class name, because React don't use class, it uses class name. All right, that has been replaced. So the next thing I want to do is to use the router here. So I'm going to import the routes from React router DOM here. This is it. Then in the React router DOM, I want to add a route. So this route should have a path, and for this path, I'll call it page-1. And there should be an element, and this element should be page 1. Okay, so I also need a default route, like for the index. So I want to route every default route to page 1 here. All right, so if I save this, let me see what I'll get. If I save and look at the browser, let me close it. Good, we are currently in the page 1. Okay, so we need to do some work on the page 1. We need to consume uh the global store, counter. So if we go to page 1, let me close this panel. If we go to page 1, we need to define a state here, a local state. So this is going to be a counter and a set counter. So this is going to be use state with the value of 0, a default value. Right, so okay, sorry, in our rxjs there's something we did not define here. I need to export a constant at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is export a constant, and this constant will be rxjs store, which we have these two values: set store counter and get store counter. Okay, we'll save. And if we go to page 1, so we want to import the set store counter, the rxjs store, so that we can use the set store counter and the get store counter. So we're going to import rxjs store. Okay, so in the rxjs store, in the page 1 rather, we need to create a use effect. In the use effect, what we want to do is to consume the global store. All right. But before we do that, let us display the value of this counter in the page one. So let me say hello page one, and this should be counter and the value of counter. So this counter here is the local state here. You can see we've not consumed the value of the global state yet, but let us see what we have on the browser. So I'm going to save and go back to the browser. Okay, so you can see we have counter equals to 0. So if I change this now, for example, I put 3, which is the default value for the counter, you can see what we are having is 3. So this is the local state. But however, we want to override the local state with the global state here. So what we'll do is we'll call the rxjs store dot get store counter, which is a behavior subject, as you can see, and we're going to subscribe to it. So I'm going to subscribe to the count that is coming, and we are going to override the local state. So what we'll do is to set counter. I'm going to replace the local state with the value from the global state to count. All right, we don't need to set any dependency because this is a subscription. It continues to read the value. All right, so let me save and let's see what we get. Remember, the local state is 3 and the global state is 0. So let me see if you can see we now have 0. Okay, sorry, let me return the local state towards 0. If I save, you can see the local state is 0 and the global state is 0. So remember, we are overriding the local state here, right here. So if I go to the global state and I put like 55, for example, and I save, you can see we have 65. So this 55 is coming from the global state, right? It's coming from the global state. You can see the value here in page one. We are setting the value here. All right. So the next thing I want to do is to increment, is to um increment the value of the global state. So I want to modify the value. So what I'll do is um I'm going to define two buttons at the bottom here. So in this button, I'll call this increment, and I'm going to add a class which is btn dash sources with a margin of 3. Then I'm going to duplicate this button and call this decrement. Okay, so but instead of sources, I'm going to give this danger, which is a red button. If I save and you look at, we should have a 2 button at the bottom. All right, so we need to define a function that will increment and decrement this value. So I'm going to create my function increment value. Okay, so this doesn't take any value, and what this does is we take we use the rxjs store and set the store counter. So to set the store counter, we need a new value, as you can see. So what I'll do is to take the local counter, then add 1 to it. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this line. Okay, so this should be what? Decrement. So for the decrement, I'm going to take the value of the local state and deduct 1 from it. So I want to use this function. So if I go to the button, I'm going to define an onClick. So in the onClick, what I want to do is to set this function, increment value, for the increment button. So I'm going to copy this and put it for the decrement button, then change the value right? Decrement value. Okay, so let me save. Sorry about that. Let me save and see what we get. Okay, by default we're having 55. You can see I can decrement the value. It's going down. It's going down, and I can also increment the value. All right. So how do we know if this same value will be displayed in another page? For us to do that, we need to create another page and link and do the same thing. Subscribe to what we've gotten here. That is the only way we'll know that yes, we are getting the same value in different states and our state is accurate. So for that, I'm going to create another component here. Then I'm going to call this page 2.gss. So I'm going to copy everything we have in page 1 and put it in page 2. But I'm going to change the name. Instead of page 1, I will call this page 2. Okay, so I'm going to say hello from page 2. In fact, to differentiate this, I need to give it a background color. So I'll do bg-warning, which is a kind of a yellow background. All right, so we need to link this page in our app.js. Right, so duplicate this line and change the value. So this should be what? Page 2, and the element should be page 2. Page 2. Okay. All right. So if I save, I'll go to the browser. If I go to slash page 2, you can see this is the page 2. So I'm going to use this button here, this landmark button, replace it so that we can use it to move from one page to another. So for that, I'll go to page 1 and use and create an instance of the use navigate. So I'm going to call this navigate, then import the use navigate from React Router DOM. So at the bottom here, I want to define a function constant go to page. So the go to page, it takes a page URL and we use the use navigate to navigate to the page URL. Okay. All right. So I want to use this function here. In fact, let me change this to a button. So for this, I want to remove the href and the role button. So I'm going to call this page 2. Page 2. And I want to add a function. Okay. So the function should go to page dash 2. Okay, so let me duplicate this so that we have another one, but I should add some margin here. So margin dash 4 and also margin dash 4. So let me change the context here. This is going to page 2, right? The first one is going to page 2. So let me just do is go to page 2, and this one go to page 1. Page 1. Okay. So this should be what? Page 1. All right. So let me copy the same thing. You know, we've only done this on page 1. So let me copy it and put it in page 2. So I'm going to locate where we have the p tag and replace that. So we need a function here. So page 1, I'm going to copy the go to URL and paste it here and paste it in page 2. Okay. The use navigate is not important. So let me copy that. Copy this line and paste it here. Paste it in page 2. Let me import the use navigate. Okay. So if I save, now let's see what we will get. Remember, this is what page 2. So if we say go to page 2, we're already in page 2, so it doesn't go anywhere. But if we click on go to page 1, it takes us to page 1. So I'm going to decrement the value in page 1 to 36. I want to go to page 2 and we want to see if we will have the same counter value of 36 in page 2. Here it is. We have the same value of 36. Decrement again in page 2 and go back to page 1. We have the same value. So we are able to maintain the state correctly. So guys, that is all for this tutorial. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in another video. Thank you.